and welcome to today's edition of Family Fridays. My name is Haley Boland. I am the Communications Fellow for New Student Family Programs. And today we're going to be talking all about new student orientation. We're nearing the end of the semester here, so we're heading into the summer and we'll be welcoming all of our new Tar Heels back to campus. So I'm sitting here with two of our student leaders. Please introduce yourselves.
Hi, my name is Vanessa Fuentes, and I'm actually a returning orientation leader.
My name is Prashoda Mariwani, and I was an orientation leader back in the day in 2017.
Perfect. So let's just start off with, why go to orientation? What's important about going to new student orientation?
I think that going to orientation is very important because for many, it's as the name says, it's like a way for students and families to orient themselves like right off the bat. Because for many families and students, this is their first, maybe second time going to UNC or even visiting, like it was for me and my mom. And so I think that one, it's a good way to kind of get familiar with like the campus. And so like your orientation leader will be like, this is the dining hall, or like, this is the union where all of the like student organizations are and things like that. On top of that, it's a good way to like create a network before even starting classes at Carolina. And so you get into a small group with other students, and it's a cool way to kind of like meet people and even meet campus partners and network with them as well. I know that for me personally, my roommate for orientation is actually one of my close friends still today. Like we hang out, we still talk on a regular basis. And so it was nice to have like a friend before even arriving in Carolina when I didn't know anybody at UNC. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's a great way to find your footing here. Like Vanessa said, it's where you hear from a lot of different campus partners. It's where you're gonna get a lot of that background info you need coming into UNC. And for me, it was the moment that I realized I was super pumped to be here. Being at orientation is such a like exciting, happy environment that it makes all of our new students feel so welcome and so ready to start their school year. And on top of that, it is a requirement for our incoming students. Another great reason to go to orientation.
Perfect. So you all mentioned that you are former and current orientation leaders. So kind of explain what the role of an orientation leader is, as well as a TSA.
Cool. Yeah. So an orientation leader basically is going to be the student leader who has been at Carolina for like a year, 2 years, 3 years. And they are the people that are going to take the new students around to different sessions they need to be going to. And they are basically your first resource here at Carolina. I know that for my orientation leader, she was absolutely fantastic. And anything that like the organization she said she was in, like when I got to campus, I joined those organizations. And it was a cool way because it was a cool way to first kind of get info about what it's like to be a student at Carolina. Because like, yes, you can hear like staff members tell you all about it, but unless you've actually lived it, it's a very different experience. So that was kind of the orientation leader's role and kind of facilitating like discussions amongst the group and like friendships and things like that.
Absolutely, yeah. Your OL is a great resource, especially after orientation, to reach out to if you have any more questions about your transition. And our TSAs are transfer student ambassadors. And for our transfer students at their orientation, not only will they be paired up with an orientation leader, but they'll also be connected with a TSA. And that's someone else that can help give guidance on the transition process, help answer some questions that maybe a transfer student would know best. So your OLs and your TSAs are just two great student resources to connect with.
Gotcha. So let's say that I am a newly admitted student and now I need to register for orientation. Where do I go for my first steps?
Yeah, the best place to do that is to go to our website, orientation.unc.edu. From there, you'll be directed to the sign-up page where you're able to register yourself as a student. You can also register your family members, any guests you want to bring along. And we have all of our directions listed on that website. You can also contact our office at any time if you have any questions. We have a very friendly staff of student leaders and employees there to answer your phone calls, answer your emails, give any direction you need on the registration process.
So let's talk about family orientation for a second. Like, is it required? What do family members experience if they register and come to orientation?
So family orientation is not required, only for first year incoming students. And so I think that for families, it's a very different experience. I know my mom personally, she was like, yes, it helped me kind of realize the different transitions my daughter was going to be going through, because I was her first child going into college. And so for her, she was like, oh, like this makes so much sense. Like, I know what you're going to be doing on a daily basis. Like, okay, you're going to go to class, maybe some organizations, things like that. And then it also kind of put her at ease, like to talk to somebody in the police department here, or talk to somebody in what is it called, financial aid, and like figure that stuff out and where to go for that. And so I know that that really helped her kind of put her at ease. And like I said, it was our second time here on campus, and so even she was able to like go through some of the cool little like traditions and like learn different things about the campus, which I think made her feel more involved in the process.
Yeah, and family orientation is an event that's separate from the student orientation. So they'll be happening at the same time, but a lot of the events that family members will be going to will be one separate from their students. So they'll be learning about some department resources that they may be more interested in, stuff like housing or safety. And there will be various points throughout orientation where they'll be able to meet up with their student, maybe talk a bit about what they learned, and connect with each other.
Absolutely. Perfect. So family orientation is optional, but encouraged if you want to learn more about UNC.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for our new students, newly admitted students, as well as transfer students, well, I guess, first of all, walk me through what day one looks like for new student orientation.
So for new student orientation, there's going to be there's a 2-day orientation process. And so for the first day, it's first like welcome. You're going to get your one card, which is your student ID, basically, while you're here at Carolina, which will help you get into like the dining hall, libraries, like past midnight, into different sporting events. And so after you do all of that, it's kind of like a big welcome kind of ceremony for all of the new students. And then you go into your small group where you first meet like the different groups, the different people in your group, and your orientation leader, and these will be the people that you're with for the next 2 days. And then after small group, you go into lunch, and then you have a couple of different sessions, such as like more than just a major, where you learn about opportunities just outside of your major. You get a little bit of a professor perspective. You do as well like registration basics, eating like a Tar Heel, different things like that. And so just so much information in that point. And then you go to dinner, and then there's going to be skits as well. And so the skits for the students are basically kind of an introduction of like, welcome to the Tar Heel world. And these are some of the scenarios that you may go through, such as like learning the bus routes. What about like meeting your roommate for the first time, things like that. After that, you go into another small group with your orientation leader and the other students in your group, and you kind of talk about what the next day looks like, talk about our Servers Project activity, which is Rise Against Hunger, which will occur right after small group, as well as there's also a Late Night Carolina, which is kind of like a socializing event for students so that they can kind of, distress from the day because it is a really long day, and kind of take their time to, like relax, and then engage with other students outside of just their group. So that's what day one looks like.
Yeah, and then on day two, we continue the information in a couple different ways. So in the morning, we have an info fair set up with a bunch of different campus organizations and partners set up to provide information to our students. We also have a kind of a choose your own adventure style layout where students can go to specific workshops, such as programs about Honors Carolina or early college transition students. If there's something you're really interested in, you're able to choose which workshop you want to go to. Beyond that, we have some more workshops on safety on campus, as well as one of the most important events for orientation, your academic advising component, where you'll have a presentation from an academic advisor on campus, and they'll kind of walk through the steps of figuring out what you want to major in, choosing what classes you need to take for the fall. This is a couple hour-long process to make sure that the students really get the information they need and get that time with the advisor to talk over if their schedule is looking good, what classes they may recommend, stuff like that. And then one of my personal favorite events is the Exploring Our Stories component. And that is where in your small group with your orientation leader, you're going to be going through some activities that help explore your own identity, which is something that we really push at orientation because this is a new point in your life, and it's a time of a huge transition. So we really want to make sure that students are coming in prepared to kind of look at themselves and bring meaning to their time at Carolina.
Yeah. So what have you both found as orientation leaders to be students' favorite parts of either day one or day two?
I think for the students that I've had, they've had a lot of fun at Rise Against Hunger because nobody expects to go and do service at orientation. And I think it allows them to know that, like, oh, I came to Carolina because of the service component that, like, Carolina brings and has. And so obviously if they have that in their orientation, it's because it's something that they value, which, like, a lot of students really appreciate. And it's not just like you doing kind of some, like, passive, I guess you could say, service. Like, you're getting involved, you're making meals, there's music, like, you're having a lot of fun while doing it, and it lets a lot of students feel like they are really part of a community right away while they're at Carolina. So
yeah. So walk me through what Rise Against Hunger is for some of our family members who might not know.
Yeah, so Rise Against Hunger is our main service component of orientation. It's part of a larger organization called Stop Hunger Now. Sorry, Rise Against Hunger, full name. And that's where we have students packing different meals in an assembly line format. And those meals are sent off to people in need. And it's something that really brings together all the students at orientation. And I remember in my experience, it was a fun time to see how doing something in such a small amount of time in a format that I wasn't used to, where you're with so many other students performing things side by side, can have such a large impact. I believe our goal is to package like 4,000 meals at a time. And it's incredible to see so many people that you've just met coming together all to have this awesome end product.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm going to pause here to remind our viewers that if you have any questions, be sure to put those in the comments and we can definitely answer those for you during this webcast. So if you think of anything, just comment right here on this video and we'll be sure to answer that. But another question I have for you all, so what are housing options like during orientation, both for students and then for families?
Yeah, so during orientation, our first year students are required to stay on campus overnight between day 1 and day 2. And they are all housed inside of Cobb Residence Hall. And within the Residence Hall, all of our orientation leaders will be there as well. And this is like a place for everyone to kind of come at the end of the day. We'll be walking our students back. And then in the morning, they'll depart, take their belongings with them, and then continue for day 2 of orientation. For family members, it's a little bit different. They have the flexibility to either live on campus, to spend the night and join a residence hall, or they can, if they choose to, go stay at a hotel, stay at a friend's place, whatever they find most comfortable.
Okay. So how many orientation sessions are there, and like what is the time on that? Like, when is the first one and when do we finish up in the summer?
So there are 14 first year orientations and 3 transfer sessions, and so 17 in total, ranging from June all the way to August.
Perfect. And so are students able to kind of like pick whichever one they want to go to, or what does that process look like?
Absolutely, yeah. We understand that the summer can be a hard time to plan, especially with vacations and internships and other programs happening. So when students go to the orientation website and select an orientation session to register for, they're able to pick which date works best for them. We have them spread across the whole summer to kind of accommodate everyone's schedules.
Perfect. So let's talk a little bit about the format of what transfer orientation is like. So if you all could kind of speak to what a transfer student day looks like.
So transfer orientation are a little bit different in that it's only one day, just because people are coming from different backgrounds, different places, and people can't, if you're coming from work, can't take 2 days off of work. So basically in the beginning, it's going to be orientation check-in, and then it's the same thing, like you get welcomed into Carolina, and then you have a presentation as well, and then you have lunch And then you do academic advising as well. And again, like more than just a major professor perspective, a lot of the same information that you get at first year orientation. And then after, you have a little bit break in between because it's a lot of information thrown at you. And so you also meet with your small group before lunch. And so that's also like a time for you to get to know your orientation leader and also make those networks and connections. And so after that, it's kind of, again, like a choose your own adventure. Students get to decide what they want to do, go to different information sessions, get their one card, things like that.
Perfect. Yeah. So, I think it's important to note that, your relationship with your students as orientation leaders doesn't just end after, either transfer orientation or day 2 of new student orientation. So if you kind of speak to the support that orientation leaders offer to students in their first semester at Carolina.
Absolutely, yeah. So your orientation leader is going to keep in contact with you throughout your first semester here. So you're going to be getting updates and emails from them. And they're always going to be a resource for you to reach out to. I know both when I was contacting my orientation leader and when I served as an OL, there's a lot of questions about registration whenever class registration opened up. And I remember my OL was so open to any questions. I think at one point I even called her to get advice. And so your OL is someone that you're always able to reach out to ask questions about maybe what clubs that they were interested in that you may be interested in joining. Maybe if they have a similar academic interest as you, to talk about how they ended up in the major, what opportunities they found, stuff like that. So you're always able to get advice from these older students who are having to share their experiences.
Yeah, so you all have kind of already touched on this too, but I think, at least in my opinion, one of the largest stressors for new students is registering for classes. So in your opinion, how does new student orientation help with that, as well as your role as an OL?
So I think new student orientation helps with that because there's a lot of different times where, so one, they meet with the registrar office, which is kind of the people who have like this whole website, and it's like the Connect Carolina. And so they're kind of showing them like, this is how you would enroll in a class. This is how you would drop a class, how you would search for a class. And then after that, you have the academic advisors who are there as well, and you get time with them. And so they're the people who are going to be like, you need 5 classes. That's all you need that's all you need for the semester. Make one of them a fun class, couple of gen eds, maybe explore a major class, things like that. And so they're very helpful because I know students come in like, there's so many classes aside from like, I don't know what to choose. And I know one of the academic advisors is always like, you just need 5 classes. That's it. 5 classes out of all of the ones that are available. And so aside from that, they also get a perspective of the student, which is the orientation leader, and kind of what it actually looks like to register for classes. And maybe if you don't get that perfect schedule, what does that look like? How do you move on from there? And so they're very helpful because they've kind of like gone through the process, and they can give recommendations of like, I took Psych 101 and I absolutely loved it with this professor, and things like that. So they get a lot of exposure to it. And as well, like the orientation leader, like we discussed, like you're still in contact with them, so you can still ask them questions during registration periods.
Yeah, I think it's important that they're not alone during this process. It can be intimidating and scary, but that's what our OLs are here for, and it's what new student orientation is there to help with too. Yeah, so a question from the audience is, what happens differently at honors orientation? We do have a special session for honors students, so if you all could talk about what that looks like for honors students here.
Yeah, so honors orientation is basically the same. You follow the exact same schedule. Only difference is that the orientation leader, just as like transfer students have a transfer student ambassador, or honor sessions have an honors host. And so those are students that are currently in the honors program. And so anything specific about like, oh, I know I have to take at least 1 honors class a semester, things like that, they can answer that question. And they also serve as a resource as well, so that they can ask questions going down the line throughout their experience, maybe like registering for classes and things like that. There's also a lot of other honors staff and faculty that is present. And so it's kind of a good way to initially meet some of these people. And then aside from that, you're just surrounded by other honors students who could also be in the same classes as you, so it's a nice little initial meet up with them as well.
And one thing I'd like to add is we only do offer the one honors student session, but if you are an incoming Honors Carolina member and you're not able to attend that session, that's totally okay. A standard orientation session will be just as informative, just as helpful. Like Vanessa said, it's going to be a very similar format. And of course, you're always able to reach out to your orientation leader with any honor-specific questions. And if they themselves can't answer them, they're going to be happy to connect you with someone who can. Another thing to add on about our honor session is that, about all of our sessions, is that there will be an honors staff person present. So you're able to talk with someone from the honors program at every orientation session.
Perfect. So when students and families come to UNC, come to campus for orientation, what does the parking process look like? I know that's always a frequently asked question, and nobody really knows where to put their car in Chapel Hill. So if you could kind of talk us through that.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest questions we get at our office, and understandably so. So on day one of orientation in the morning, when our students and family members arrive, we ask them to park in the S11 Manning parking lot. That's located just past the Dean Smith Center, our favorite place, the Dean Dome. And we have signs set up throughout campus to help you navigate to that spot. Additionally, one of the things that we ask for preparation for orientation is that students and families print the parking permit that comes emailed to them whenever they register for orientation or as the date approaches for their orientation. So all they'll have to do is place that permit in the dash of their car and park at the S11 Manning parking lot, and they'll be all set. One thing to note is that it is farther away from the Union and where all of our events take place, but we do have a shuttle system set up to bring students and families to and from that parking lot to kind of cut down on the travel.
Perfect. Yeah, and are there people around the parking lots and things to help direct families, or how does that work?
Yes, so there's actually going to be orientation leaders in the parking lot with like big signs and always really high energy early in the morning, basically saying like park over here, like you're going the right way. And then there is also accessibility parking if that's something you need as well, more near the Union and up on North Campus. And so orientation leaders will also like be scattered along as well, so that if you need the accessibility parking, they'll be like, go this way, park over here. And so there will also be orientation flags at the turn for the S11 parking lot. And so make sure you're on the lookout for that as you come to orientation.
Yeah, so look out for the flags, look out for the bright blue polos. That's
Yes.
what our orientation leaders wear. If you see someone in a Carolina polo, they probably can answer your question.
Yes.
Also, I think our parking orientation leaders have bright orange vests on too. So we're hard to miss, so be sure to ask your questions there. I'd also like to remind you all to keep submitting your questions in the comments below. And something else too, so as Carolina students, you all have been through orientation both as a student, like a new student, and as an orientation leader. So what has been the most impactful portion, I guess learning as a new student, what has been your favorite portion of orientation?
Ooh, all right. I guess for me, coming in as a student who didn't know anyone, coming to Carolina, I was kind of like starting fresh. So going to orientation as a new student and seeing how welcoming everyone was, and how friendly both the orientation leaders and the incoming students were, really was impactful for me. It was actually at my new student orientation, seeing all the OLs doing their dances and skits, that I decided that I wanted to be an orientation leader. That became my #1 goal. And a big part of it was wanting to be a part of that high energy, happy environment that made me feel so welcome coming in. And then, when I became an orientation leader, one of my best experiences was like when I would have students come after saying that after the whole event was over, they felt so much more prepared, which is, of course, our goal as orientation leaders, as an orientation office, is to help our incoming students feel ready to take on the challenge of the transition to college. And we do as much as we can to put in as many resources and support networks to set them up for success here.
Yeah, and I think, so one of my favorite parts, this is going to sound kind of funny, but one of my favorite parts was actually academic advising, because it was actually one of the most stressful things that I think I was coming in as a first generation college student. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, there's so many things to choose from. And so that was probably the best part for me. One, because like I had academic advising that I could like answer these questions, but two, because I knew that I had my OL to ask questions like further down the line, which was also very helpful. And so I think that as a orientation leader, one of the most impactful things that I've been able to experience was actually exploring our stories, which was the component that we talked a little bit about earlier, where students really kind of talk about their identity and how that has shaped kind of who they are and who they aspire to be as they like grow throughout Carolina. And I think that this has brought me a lot closer to a lot of my students, and a lot of them have opened up about very personal things. And it has allowed us to like really make a strong connection that has carried along throughout like their first year at Carolina. And so like I'll still get messages from them like asking questions like, hey, like I don't really know what to do about this, like can you help me? And so I think it's nice because it shows me that like it is I have been able to like make that connection with them so that it's not they're on their own that first year. So
yeah. Absolutely. I think that's an important thing to realize about the role of an orientation leader is that they're there to be your guide through your entire first year on campus, regardless of whether you're a new student or a transfer. Either or, I think it's a really important support role that, you know, if you have a question, ask y'all, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that's all we have for you all for this edition of Family Fridays. We hope to see you all at orientation. And if you have any other questions about anything, feel free to reach out to our email addresses at newstudents@unc.edu or families@unc.edu. You can also call the office at 919-962-8304. So feel free to contact us that way, and we wish you the best of luck in your first year here at Carolina.